midway through. So I'm Melissa Everett. I'm Executive Director of Sustainable Hudson Valley, and our mission is to speed up, scale up, jazz up, and leverage progress against climate change, creating communities where people and nature thrive. And if it could be said more briefly without losing it, I would, but that's what it is. And so we've done an awful lot of work over the last 15 years, everything from opening up the solar marketplace back when everybody thought it was a good idea, but nobody had it. Getting people used to thinking about EVs, getting charging out there, training car dealerships on how to sell them. We've done a major regional climate action roadmap and toolkit with about 90 passionate experts trying to figure out how do we get more of a common vision and go from, the next little thing we can do to more leveraged action that's more coordinated. So that, acceleration through coordination is a big thing that we're about. And I was just, I'm always looking for the most innovative people who are doing the most gutsy, creative things, and, just leaning into, dare to be naive is what Buckminster Fuller used to say. And I think that's really what we got to do. So this conversation is about, let's see what we call this, securing our environmental rights, looking at legal strategies and youth voices. And it was inspired by the news of what I gather was a long shot and maybe a rarity, but the legal victory of the youth-led lawsuit in Montana, which has an environmental rights constitutional amendment just like New York does. So we have hustled around and found an amazing group to share with you theory and strategy and personal observations, personal stories. And I think unlike some of our like fire hose informational Zooms, this has the possibility of being a conversational container for us. Maya van Rossum is an environmental activist and attorney who founded the National Green Amendments for the Generations organization and movement. She coined the term Green Amendment in her book, The Green Amendment, The People's Fight for Clean, Safe and Healthy Environment, which is just out in its second edition. She's also served as the Delaware River Keeper and leader of the four-state advocacy and litigation organization, the Delaware River Keeper Network, for 30 years. So Maya's going to lead us off with a presentation about vision and strategy. And then we're going to have three more voices. Kyle Conway is a new friend and collaborator, teaches fifth grade in the Balmville, New York elementary schools. Did I get that right? And widely educates the community on racial and environmental justice. Among many other things, he's vice president of the NAACP Newburgh Highland Falls chapter. Kyle is lead instructor of a new environmental restoration and justice program called Planting Power Newburgh, which we are launching tomorrow morning and scrambling to get ready for, coordinated by the Greater Newburgh Parks Conservancy and Sustainable Hudson Valley, with funding from the Rotary Foundation. Claudia Sachs is a junior at Columbia University studying human rights and sustainable development. She's a youth plaintiff in Layla H. versus Commonwealth of Virginia, a climate lawsuit arguing that her state's permitting of fossil fuel infrastructure violates her constitutional rights. She also founded and directed the BBYO International Climate Crisis Task Force, a network of 75 teens representing 15 countries in order to fight climate change through education and advocacy. And she's currently directing the Columbia Sustainability and Climate Action Team. And Eileen Corrales is a current SUNY New Paltz biochemistry major and an environmental justice fellow with the Greater Newburgh Parks Conservancy, which is a rockin' organization. She is a longtime resident of Newburgh and loves it. She grew up in a science and agricultural background and has always wanted to help nature and people. And she says she can't wait to share her passion and knowledge. So Let's have Maya, let's have Maya lead us and take it away.
Okay, so thank you for that awesome introduction. And I'm really pleased to be here with such a fine group of panelists and excited that we have so many participants on this Friday afternoon. But mostly, I am excited to talk to you about the Green Amendment movement. And I will tell you that I was not surprised by the Montana victory because Montana actually has a Green Amendment, which is what we're going to talk about. And it is because of the strength and the clarity of the plain language and the proper placement of a Green Amendment in Montana that I feel like victory was assured. That was my expectation. And I'll explain to you a little bit about why. You've heard about me. So, really, we're here talking about solutions. And of course, when it comes to addressing the climate crisis, we have to be all in on everything. We need to be protesting and advocating and testifying and litigating, right? Battling the bad, fighting for the good. We have to be voting the right people into office. We don't really have the luxury of putting all of our eggs into one basket. We need to be filling all baskets all the time, and each of us using our talents in the best way we can to advance the strategy that best resonates with us. But I'm here to suggest to you that one of the baskets we must fill, we must add to the palette of work, is transforming our system of laws and governance here in the United States of America when it comes to environmental protection, which of course includes addressing the climate crisis. And that does not mean, when I say, transforming the law and system of governance, it does not mean passing one more law or even a dozen more laws. The fact of the matter is we have hundreds of thousands of environmental protection laws here in the United States of America, and yet we're still facing many, many crises of all kinds when it comes to the environment and environmental justice. And that's for a whole boatload of reasons. But one of the realities there are a couple of realities of the law when it comes to environmental protection here in the United States. First off, no one law can address all of the ills that have to be addressed. There are so many aspects of an issue or the placement of a facility or how things can operate. It's just impossible to pass a law or even a series of laws that can cover every scenario or imagine every future activity that have to be addressed in order to remedy a problem, or more importantly, prevent a problem. The other reality is when it comes to environmental protection law here in the United States, the way the entire system is written is it's really written to focus on legalizing environmental pollution, degradation, and harm. Hopping to the end of the process and saying, okay, we're going to presume pollution and degradation. What reviews, what permits, what hearings are we going to hold that are going to allow us to legalize some devastating industrial operation or environmentally degrading activity? The way the system of laws here in the United States works when it comes to the environment, it is not a system that is focused on prevention of harm as the first priority. It's also a system filled with gaps and loopholes. We know of all kinds of things that evade regulation and protection, either because of an absence of law altogether, or because, like in the case, for example, of fracking and the Safe Drinking Water Act, there are carefully carved loopholes that allow the industry to evade regulation. And so really what we need when it comes to laws and governance here in the United States, when it comes to the environment, is we truly, truly, truly need transformational change. And I'm here to suggest to you that passage of green amendments in every state across our nation and ultimately at the federal level brings that transformational change that we are seeking and that we so desperately need. In long and short of it is, what a green amendment does is it lifts up the rights to a clean, safe, and healthy environment so they are given highest constitutional recognition, standing, and protection, that they are a right that belongs to we the people and are therefore enforceable by we the people, and gives our environmental rights that highest, again, constitutional standing. If you want highest constitutional recognition, protection, and enforceability, not just any language anywhere in the Constitution will do. You have to really meet to be assured the critical protections we're trying to achieve. We need to meet the key elements, or what I call the Green Amendment criteria. There are certain criteria that when we achieve them, we get that highest constitutional standing. And when we pass a green amendment that meets those criteria, we empower both the law and we empower people. We empower activists to greater protection. First off, again, we lift up, with the passage of a green amendment, we lift up environmental rights, the rights to clean water, clean air, safe climate, and healthy environments. So they are given the same constitutional recognition, protection, and enforceability as all of the other fundamental rights we hold dear. We all know how powerfully our rights to free speech and freedom of religion are protected, for example. Well, when we pass a green amendment, we give that same strength and enforceability by and for the people to our environmental rights. With the passage of a green amendment, we ensure that all government officials at every level of government, from the local town council to the state legislature to the governor's office, all the regulatory agencies, that all government officials becomes constitutionally bound to protect the environmental rights of all the people. And they must protect those rights equitably, regardless of race, ethnicity, wealth, gender, geography. No more environmental sacrifice zones. If you have an environmental sacrifice zone where communities of color, low-income communities, indigenous communities are being disproportionately impacted by pollution or degradation, whether intentional or unintentional, whether by design or not, when that's happening, you can have a constitutional question that can be brought to bear to try to find a remedy. With the passage of a green amendment, we necessarily reorient governance or governing for the environment so it's focused on prevention of pollution and degradation and harm first, not just hopping to the end and saying, well, what permit are we going to issue to legalize whatever it is that industry wants to do? This becomes a constitutional obligation, this focus on prevention first. And with a properly framed and placed green amendment, we can also secure critical generational protection. And this is not just aspirational language saying that we will protect environmental rights for present and future generations yet to be born. As we've demonstrated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where generational language is part of the Pennsylvania Green Amendment, this is legally substantive and enforceable language. With the passage of a green amendment, all the laws that are already on the books become strengthened, because now all laws have to be interpreted through the lens of how government must interpret and enforce those laws in order to achieve their obligation to protect the environmental rights of present and future generations and the natural resources of their state. It's no longer just up to the legislators and the regulatory agencies to decide how clean is clean. The people now have an actual seat at the table to ensure that there's a proper interpretation and application of key terms when it comes to environmental protection. When we have the passage of a green amendment, if there's a gap in the law, if there's a loophole, if there's something not regulated, and it's now being allowed to advance in our community, resulting in devastating harm, we can actually turn to our constitutional right to pure water. That's the language in Pennsylvania: pure water, clean air, a healthy environment, a safe climate, to actually take on, fill that legal gap and bring a legal challenge to challenge whatever it is that's concerning us and creating harm. The deficiencies in how laws are being interpreted and how they're being applied can be addressed. Long ignored issues or issues that are coming to the fore where the law hasn't yet caught up because legislators are taking too much time lobbying and arguing to address a problem that's emerging. Well, now people have this constitutional entitlement that they can turn to directly, go into court and try to seek a remedy. And as I've just intimated, when our government officials, ideally with the Green Amendment, all government officials are always working to fulfill their constitutional obligation to protect the environmental rights of the people and the natural resources of the state. And so we're actually avoiding problems and avoiding the need for litigation. But when our government officials fundamentally fail us with a constitutional Green Amendment, we have a constitutional right to go into court and vindicate our environmental rights that we believe are being infringed upon. We don't have to find a statute or a law that gives us permission to go into court to try to address the problem. We can turn to our constitutional entitlement. And it's not just about the law. When we pass constitutional Green Amendments now, when people are going forth, activists are going forth to fight for the earth and the people that they love and they care about, they are not just fighting for what they believe in, but they are fighting for a constitutional right that they are entitled to. And that dramatically shifts the landscape. First off, it's very empowering for activists themselves to have this constitutional element added to what they're advocating for. But the other thing is now all of the government decision makers to whom they're advocating or speaking no longer can just sit back and roll their eyes and say, well, that's sort of nice that that person thinks that or believes that. No, they have to listen harder and smarter and more firmly, because now they are constitutionally on the hook to address whatever it is that person is raising when the environment is implicated. So it really changes the way activists internalize what they're doing and how the language that they choose to use, but it also actually obliges, by virtue of the Constitution, all government officials to pay attention, because now they're on the hook constitutionally. The Green Amendment movement is a nationwide movement that's starting with the states. We are going state by state by state, seeking and securing the passage and then enforcement of constitutional green amendments. And ultimately, when we have enough people understanding the power and the importance of this pathway, we're going to reach a tipping point, and we're going to know the time is right to also go for a federal green amendment, because we need them both. We need state green amendments and federal green amendments, because when it comes to environmental law in the United States, the states have a lot of power, but so too does a federal green amendment, or so too does the federal government. So we need constitutional rights and obligations that can hold both levels of government accountable. At this point, we have green amendments in 3 states, Pennsylvania, Montana, and just less than 2 years ago, we got our green amendment passed in the state of New York. But I'm working now in over 15, well, now it's actually 17. There are 2 that I need to add to the map, where green amendments have either been proposed or about to be proposed, because people really want the power of this pathway for protection. Does it really make a difference? Well, as you've heard, right? We just had a incredible victory secured by 6 youth plaintiffs in the state of Montana, where, because they had a constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution, meeting the key criteria, they were able to defeat a law that prohibited government officials in the state from considering the climate when undertaking their decision making. And the result was they were able to continue to perpetuate and grow and exacerbate the expansion of the extraction, use, consumption of dirty fossil fuels in the state. That case was the first time where climate was front and center when using this kind of constitutional language, but it was not the first legal victory for a green amendment. We've had powerful victories where I and my Delaware Riverkeeper Network organization actually defeated a devastatingly pro-fracking law in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania based on that state's Green Amendment. The Green Amendment in Montana has been used to defeat industrial gold mining operations that would have happened in remote natural areas with serious consequences for the environment and for communities. We've used the Green Amendment in Pennsylvania to secure cleanup of a long ignored toxic site. And right now in the state of New York, the Green Amendment is being used by communities to take on a massively expanding landfill, releasing greenhouse gas emissions and other hazardous air emissions. Up until the passage of the New York Green Amendment, these communities that are being impacted by this operation were ignored. Once they got a hold of the Green Amendment, now the government had to listen to them. And it's not just people and organizations that are relying on the Green Amendment to make change. Importantly, it's government officials who are relying on their Green Amendments to do better as well. A local municipality in Pennsylvania used the Green Amendment to preserve an old growth beech tree forest, the last remaining green space in their town. And at the state level, both Montana and Pennsylvania have secured critical and advanced critical drinking water protections because of their Green Amendments. So Green Amendments are making a difference in many, many places, spaces, and ways. This is a movement that requires and is being led by the grassroots. People of all ages, all races, all ethnicities, all backgrounds are coming together to secure the passage of Green Amendments and then enforce them. This is New York's Green Amendment. It's a lot less language than we have in Pennsylvania and Montana and in other states where Green Amendments are advancing, but it gets the job done. Each person shall have a right to clean air and water and a healthful environment. With the passage of this Green Amendment, yes, ultimately people can use it in the courts as they are doing with regards to that landfill operation. But you don't have to have the ability to go into court or wait for legal action to be able to benefit from the New York Green Amendment. Every single time anybody goes forth to advocate on the environment, to talk to any government official, they should begin their testimony or their conversation with, I have a right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. And now, because of the Montana victory, where that healthful environment language is also included in Montana's amendment, you can easily add, and that means I also have a right to a safe climate. And know that as we go forth and successfully use New York's Green Amendment to accomplish more and more victories, just like when we accomplish victories in Pennsylvania and Montana, we are inspiring communities in states across the nation where this movement is advancing. So I hope you'll join the Green Amendment movement. The website is forthegenerations.org. There's an active website for every state where there's active engagement. For New York, it'll be nygreenamendment.org. We have a new Green Amendment Action app we're trying to upload people onto so they can have dynamic real-time conversation and organizing happening. And of course, there's the book, The Green Amendment, The People's Fight for a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment, filled with stories about why we need this pathway, how this pathway is making a difference. And if you did get the book, to read for yourself or share it with someone else, every penny of the proceeds or profit goes to the movement. None of it goes to my pocket, because it's really just about saving the world. So I went a minute over. I apologize. I will stop sharing.
Great job, Maya. Thank you. And there's a comment that's kind of a question. I've heard the Green Amendment isn't being enforced in New York. Do I understand it right? A constitutional amendment isn't exactly enforced. It sits there unless action is taken.
No.
Help us understand that.
Yeah. Do you want to have the other speakers go first and then have me address that, or do you want me to address that?
Let's
now?
just do that one. We'll do that one question, then we'll go to the other speakers.
Great. So first off, when you have a constitutional obligation that applies to all government officials, it should be immediately implemented by those government officials because they have this constitutional duty. You know, legislators and regulators, they don't sit around and say, oh, well, I'm not going to think about the right to free speech or freedom of religion until it's challenged. They actually, because those constitutional entitlements have strength and enforceability, and they have been used over the years, government officials consider them all the time when they're engaging in their governing work. They're trying to avoid infringement because infringement means litigation. So that actually happens with green amendments. And that's why I highlighted that local municipality protecting the green space and the states protecting drinking water, because those were proactive efforts where government officials were relying on the Green Amendment to do good. But if you believe your constitutional entitlement has been infringed upon, yes, it does need to be enforced. We, the people, need to enforce it. And we actually have a number of lawsuits in the state of New York. And that one landfill case, it's called the Faith case. If you go to forthegenerations.org, the resources page, you'll see me, I put write-ups of all the key cases, and you'll see a couple of cases in New York where there have actually been otherwise unachievable successes that have been accomplished using New York's Green Amendment. And there are more cases that are advancing right now where people are being able to bring challenges in a much more powerful way than they would have absent the New York Amendment. But the New York Amendment is being very vibrantly utilized right now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Because I know Kyle and I have been putting this into our curriculum for the weekend, I want to see if we can hand it over to him for just 5 minutes or so. And I've asked all the three commenters to be, you know, long enough, but just be informal. You know, how does this resonate with you? What do you see as the potential power and potential ways that this could be used in the world you live in?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kyle Conway. I am the first vice president of the local NAACP branch here in Newburgh, New York. I am excited about this. The way I care about the environment, and the way I look at the environment is It's Mother Nature. It's our mother. And our mother is asking for protection, to be represented, to be regarded. I see the way we disregard the environment is the way we disregard women. And I feel like if there was a masculine um, principle, I feel like we would take care of him, right? Um, and I think it's also, we don't recognize Mother Nature as a living thing, right? So a lot of times I really focus on how can the language to use to help people understand the importance of addressing climate change. And some people don't believe in climate change. I spend a lot of time listening to those who do not believe. So I've learned not to speak in climate change vernacular at first. I've learned to speak in pollution first, right? Because the issue is pollution. If you want to argue that the climate spikes up and down during several historical periods, that's fine. But we cannot argue with pollution. We cannot argue with poor practices that taint finite resources. The NAACP's one of our ambitions is to make sure people are protected, and that anyone, regardless of your race, you're not affected and affected by pollution because of your zip code. It's so I'm inspired to inspire people to see things differently, because we only have one mother, and we need to be responsible with all the gifts she keeps giving us, right? If you remember your mother, you're gonna do the right thing, if you will. Um, I also want to inspire people to think about the scarcity, the concept of scarcity. Like, people say these going green is can't be done. There's not enough funding. But I think it's really about priority, right? We shouldn't get to a point where we need to cure. We need to have these preventative measures before we have to cure our poor responses or poor perspectives. This is there is funding, there is money, and I think if our government view things a certain way as a priority as a whole, I think things would be different. Pollution matters. The fact, environmental justice to me is the same concept as, it's definitely a human rights issue, but I think about things like in terms of police brutality. There are different forms of abuse. And when I think about climate change, I think about neglect. That's a form of abuse. We are neglecting the obvious signs and predictors of what our planet is going to look like in a few years. So the Green Amendment movement, oh, it makes me happy, because policy impacts behavior. And when you have, it's like prohibition, right? There was this movement, and then it was nationally, liquor was declared something negative. But then the states themselves started to change the policy. And once you set a precedence in one place, it's easier to do it across the states. So the wave of change is here. We are here. And I'm always going to fight for my mom. I'm always going to fight for my mother, if you will. And that may be idealistic, that may be altruistic, but you know what? I'm thinking futuristic. So I think our policy, and this is something we're going to speak about at our event. The policy needs CPR, which is critical. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting it now. Critical policy revolution, right? We have to view things differently. Policy impacts behavior, and I'm trying to be on the right side of history when it comes to environmental justice. So that's what we're doing in Newburgh. I would like to see all environmentalists come together. People need leadership. People want to follow a trend. Let us create a trend that's going to invest back into the community and back into humanity.
Okay, loving it. Eileen, I want to hand it to you because you're sitting also in Newburgh. You have a sense of place and a sense of obviously tremendous purpose.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Eileen Corrales. I am a senior at SUNY New Paltz. I'm a biochemistry major, and I'm really grateful to be here and be a part of this great opportunity and be amongst all of you all, because all of you play such an important role in something that I've been really dreaming of since I was a kid. Uh, So, what I really wanted to share was my experience and how it's kind of played a role in what I've been doing and in Newburgh. So, I am of Mexican Colombian descent. I am a first generation American and a first generation college student in my family. It's a lot of weight. But I did grow up in a agricultural background. My family, we had a farm that I grew up in and that I loved very dearly. And I remember going outside and just being able to enjoy nature and being able to connect with it in a different level. And I felt really at peace. Obviously, the labor wasn't fun, but it was something that really helped me bond and grow with my family and something that we could share with the community. But unfortunately, we did have to lose our farm due to expenses building up. And unfortunately, the soil that we had in our farm was no longer the best due to a lot of environmental issues going around where we were. And the main aspect that I really want to hit was kind of my transition, because I came from all of this green and kind of green space, beautiful, like fresh air. And I moved, like, I was still in Newburgh, but I moved into the city of Newburgh, which was a whole different experience for me and my family. And we tried really hard to keep hold of kind of like our culture and our background of us being kind of farmers and agricultural. My mom grew up on a farm back in her home country in Mexico, and she would share with us all these different techniques and all of these different farming aspects that really, I think, define who I am and define my culture, and was something that I really wanted to hold on to. But it was hard in the city of Newburgh because there wasn't much green space to begin with. And as time went on, it started affecting my health along with my family's health, where later on, as I got older, I actually developed asthma um, from being in the city of Newburgh because of the unclean air. And it wasn't just me, because, and it was strange because no one in my family had any signs or any diagnosis of asthma previously. So it was just kind of out of nowhere. I didn't even know that was a thing. And as I continue on, I started watching not only like my friends around me developing asthma and it getting severe for the ones that already had asthma. I saw children getting asthma. I saw older generations getting asthma, and it was just like this shell shock where I'm like, why does everyone all of a sudden have asthma? And not only that, it was affecting me in different ways that I wouldn't have even guessed. Like the water quality, there were days where I would come home and my mom was like, "Oh, you can't shower. You can't use the sink water. You can't you can't do this, you can't do that with the water." I'm like, "Why?" And I understand at that time she was like, "Well, how do I explain this to a kid?" Um and at that moment in my life, I was like, water. Like, it's supposed to be clean. We live near a river. You know, Newbury is along the Hudson River. So I'm like, how, why? And, you know, it's still a journey that I experience now, seeing all of the ways that the environment in Newbury has been impacted. Because I am a rowing coach, and I go down to the water to help teach little kids how to row, and I see all like these physical objects and how the water is so contaminated and dirty, and it makes me not want to be in it. And not only that, there's like so many linkages of how the water in Newburgh has been destroying pipelines and kind of causing illnesses and diseases. And oh boy, the way the using dirty water to water your plants will only just spread it, and then now it gets into our foods. And that was another issue that me and my family faced, where we would grow our own vegetables, and there were times where we actually got sick and we couldn't piece together why. And it was because of the water, it was because of the soil, it was because of the way people were just trashing on the city. And me and my mom, we would make the effort. We would go out there cleaning the streets, and it just wasn't enough, because people where I used to live in Newburgh, it was considered, we were low income. We weren't really the matter, because like where I came from and grew up in Newburgh was low income, was people of color, was minorities, and it was hard. It was really difficult, because I watched as trees slowly started to fade away, the streets would get hotter, and it was like over time people were just getting more and more sick. And we were people that weren't even contributing to that main issue, and yet we were the ones being affected and being at risk and taking we were basically the front line of everything. And what I just do want to share is, I think what we've been doing as a group and this meeting to exist, I'm really grateful and so passionate for everything that will happen, because it will happen. There is no doubt in my mind that we will not push and continue for a better future, and to fight for Mother Nature. Like Kyle was saying, Mother Nature needs our help. She gave us life, and now it's time to keep her life alive. Yeah.
Beautiful. Everyone is increasingly a hard act to follow. And so Claudia, you get you get to play cleanup. And as a plaintiff in one of the lawsuits yourself, and as a college student who's been organizing your generation so widely, whatever's on your mind about how this matters and how we can do some good with it.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, and thank you for organizing this incredible event and bringing me here and bringing us all together. It's really an honor to learn from you and with all of you on this panel. Thank you, Eileen, for sharing that really beautiful, personal, and heartfelt story about how climate change is impacting you and your family on a personal level. I think it really connects very well with what Kyle is saying about translating the language of climate change into something that people are understanding on the ground. And I think if we combine that with personal stories like yours, that really gives a lot of the magic that we're missing right now. And Maya, I think you gave us a great background on green amendments, which is something that has a lot of potential, especially within legal and judicial contexts, but requires organizing and work and power and a huge sweeping national team effort. So I think this is a great team, and I'm really excited to see what we do. So as Melissa shared, I am one of 13 youth plaintiffs in Layla HV Commonwealth of Virginia, which is a lawsuit in my home state of Virginia. I'm from Richmond, and we are arguing that Virginia's permitting of fossil fuel infrastructure violates our constitutional rights. And it's very much based on substantive due process arguments and the right to life, liberty, and property, which is enshrined in the Virginia Constitution. It's also based on things James Madison said about climate change and the way the climate is impacting us. And it's also very much based on the fact that Virginia holds responsibility specifically for climate change, and each state has an obligation to its citizens and its inhabitants to be fighting climate change. And it's part of a network of lawsuits that are being filed across the country by an organization called Our Children's Trust. And they are a bold group of lawyers who, like Maya, really believe in the climate, believe in the youth, and believe in our existing constitutions as a method for fighting climate change and advocating for youth. And one of the challenges in Virginia is we don't have something like a Green Amendment. It's missing, and my experience as a plaintiff and our experience in the case as plaintiffs really shows what a Green Amendment could do. So our case was dismissed from the bench in September because Virginia has special provisions where you have to ask permission in order to sue the state, which is its own separate issue, but just shows that there are many, many legal challenges in each of these lawsuits. But even if the case were to be heard on its merits, it's very difficult for us to bring a strong case because life, liberty, and property is very, very broad. James Madison's words aren't constitutional provisions, and it's very hard to bring those arguments. So I still have faith in our case, and it's being appealed as we speak. But if we had something like Montana has, which is a Green Amendment and a right to a clean and healthy environment, our case would have a lot more teeth. And we could actually really say this is a specific constitutional right, and we are entitled to this right as inhabitants of this state. And as a state, you have violated it. And therefore, you have to take these actions. You have to stop permitting fossil fuel infrastructure, or you have to stop your drilling and exportation of fossil fuels, or you have to stop your support of policies that are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So there's lots of legal pathways we can go with green amendments, and I have a lot of hope in them. And I appreciate that we have people on every single side of this issue, whether it's citizens and students and activists, whether it's experts. We are knocking on every single door. We're at the legislatures, we're working in the executive branch, and the judicial branch is powerful. It's also slow, and it's also frustrating, as I have found in my personal experience. And I'm sure many of you on this call have also felt that experience firsthand. So we need to be pushing in the courts, but we also can't be twiddling our thumbs and waiting around as the courts take their time to go through the lengthy process. So organizations like Sustainable Hudson Valley that are working on the front lines of these issues and fighting directly within local governments and schools, like with the work Kyle's doing and teaching and educating and bringing a racial justice lens with your work at the NAACP. Really, there's so many different avenues and so many different pathways that we can fight. And it's knocking on every door and pushing some of them down, and working for that kind of radical change that requires persistence. And it's an honor to be a young person right now. It's also a really big challenge, and it's very scary, and we need to take that time to acknowledge the real fear of living in an inhospitable planet, as Eileen really shared so beautifully. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of this call and a part of this case and this movement. And I want to make sure that we have time to all really discuss things with each other and pass things around and hear from everyone who's taken their time to be here. So I'll leave it with that and open to any questions or thoughts.
This is a small group, so feel free to just pop up your hand or unmute if nobody's talking and just chime in. I'm interested, I have a question for the audience, which is if you had to sum up what you've heard, how would you sum it up? What's in the room? Maybe even just some words or images.
Hi. My name's Nitya. I am so inspired by what I've heard today. I was really excited about the other case that won, and I think that the youth and the momentum to advocate for change and getting these laws changed is crucial. I know that they recently finally got approval for I believe it's the Mountain Pipeline here in Virginia. It is terrifying. It is going straight through shareholder land that was given to former slave families. It's like Kyle was saying, it is breaks my heart the way that they go after, and with Eileen's case too, that they're going into land that is owned by our minorities, by people, you know, indigenous people. It is the destruction of Mama Earth. And this is the time. It is now. And next year is a presidential election. It is huge. And we've got to break the system. They've already decided who's going to be running. They've already made the decision, and we've got to break that. I don't know how we climb these mountains, but this is a great start. Thank you.
Others? What's on your mind?
This is Kathy Lawrence. I work with the Greater Newburgh Parks Conservancy and manage the Environmental Justice Fellowship here in the city of Newburgh. And just want to thank all of the organizers and all of the speakers for a really great webinar. And I'm very glad we have this recorded so that more people can have access to the information and the energy and the passion. What I'm hearing is there's hope in the courts, and it's slow and frustrating. It's not the only avenue. I think that for several years now, I mean, my greatest hope is in the younger generation and bringing their passion and their perspectives and their razor sharp minds and a whole variety of skills to bear. I think that we have become very disillusioned in all branches of government at all levels. And so the more we can tell the success stories and then replicate those success stories and learn from one another's efforts to really not recreate the wheel, but just keep the wheel rolling, I think is part of what I'm hearing too. That there are ways, there are models, there are pathways, and there are leaders ready to share what they've learned to sort of speed up this really important but sometimes too slow work. Thank you again. I think this has been really, really wonderful.
Thank you. Maya?
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for all the great comments. As Kathy was speaking, I just had two thoughts that I just wanted to share. One of the things is, you know, talking about being disillusioned with the government. That is one of the most powerful things about the Green Amendment movement. This is we, the people, using our democracy to take our power back. Because the truth is, the government, right, is created by the people. It's supposed to be operating for the people. And our state and federal constitutions are we, the people, giving government permission to govern over us, but then making clear that when you govern, there are some rules of the road. And amongst the rules of the road are that we, the people, have these inalienable human rights that we've listed in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions, that we have said that while we've given you permission to govern, we have not given you permission to take over and infringe on these fundamental rights that belong to us. These are rights we are holding unto ourselves, and we are not just wholesale handing over to government. And so that is one of the things I think the Green Amendment is. This is democracy and history in action. And it's we, the people, right now, taking our power back and, you know, being part of real history for the future. Right now, people ask me all the time, why didn't our forefathers? And it's because they say forefathers because they were a bunch of old white men, but we're now the four peoples. You know, would say, why did they not think about the environment? I don't know why they didn't think about the environment. They were talking about the environment way back in colonial times, but we have the opportunity to remedy, right, that oversight that was created for whatever reason. So to me, that's the thing, is this is, to the extent that we watch those in government misusing their authority or misusing the process, the Green Amendment movement is our opportunity to take our power back. And we're not sitting and waiting and hoping that the courts make the right decision. By passing green amendments, and there are these certain criteria, there's an event on October 4th where we're talking about held, and I'm actually going to go through those criteria. But when we fulfill these criteria, we're being very clear with the government through the plain language of the Constitution, what is the appropriate outcome. And so it doesn't mean that some courts won't abuse their power or won't get it wrong, at least for a little while. But the clarity of the amendment really reduces the opportunity for the courts to get it wrong. And like we demonstrated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, challenging that pro-fracking law, even a very conservative Pennsylvania State Supreme Court was forced to strike down that Pennsylvania pro-fracking law, because the clarity of the plain language that was in the Constitution complemented that by that Bill of Rights placement. So just as you were saying, there is hope with the courts, but only when we provide to them, like we're going to do for other government officials, we provide the clarity of the rules that they have to follow.
Great. I want to add an observation. I've been reading this book by a neuroscientist called something like Healing American Democracy or something. It's just the idea that people, the division that we're experiencing now is not inevitable, and it's not all, you know, it seems like it's getting worse, but it's not getting worse in every case. And on climate, I've mentioned this a bunch during Climate Solutions Week. The people who are concerned or alarmed about climate change are 53% of the American public. The slice of the public that is in denial of climate change is 11%. We are a majority, and we need to act like a majority, and you know, hold the strength of the majority, and I think the unity. Do any presenters want to share what questions for each other or observations about what we're hearing? Claudia, and then Kyle.
Hey, just a quick question for you, Maya. Right now we know that political consensus is very challenging to achieve on any issue. And in order to pass an amendment, I know at the federal level, I think you need a 2/3 majority. So how do you foresee that an amendment specifically could overcome some of the political hurdles that legislation hasn't been able to overcome on its own?
So great question. So the hurdle of a federal amendment, constitutional amendment of any kind, is right. It's at 3/4 of the states. And it's a different process. And it is one of the reasons why we're starting at the state level first, or that's why I've crafted the strategy that way, because the reality is that state constitutions do get amended with regularity. It is not rare. In fact, what we've seen since the Dobbs decision, right, where abortion rights were taken away from people with a uterus, we've seen constitutional amendments proposed very quickly and passed. And so at the state level, the process is clearer and simpler, and there's more of a role for the people. And the closeness between the governing decision makers and the people, well, they're much closer, right? So that there is greater opportunity to use grassroots organizing, educating, rallying, lobbying, and all of that to really move the needle, to the extent that the legislators have a role in amending the Constitution. And of course, there's always the opportunity to vote them out and vote people in, other people in, and that has a bigger impact at the state level, because at the state level, generally, if you go by the legislative approach, there's a certain number that has to be achieved in terms of legislators voting in support, and then the amendment goes right to the people. Governor has no role. And so in a state like New Mexico, it's majority vote in each of the legislative houses once, and then the amendment goes before the people. In a single year, you could pass a constitutional amendment of this kind in the state of New Mexico. In other states, the bar is a little higher, 2/3 or 3/5 if you want to just have a single vote, or majority vote if you do it twice. So
Great.
it's just a different process, but I think we do. And there's also the petition process, like they're doing in Florida, where actually you can do it in a number of states by citizen petition. And it's all about getting the right number of signatures, and then the people get to vote.
Great. Kyle had a comment or a question?
Yes, I was gonna say two things. One, I do like the concept of Mama Earth. It feels very personal. And I think changing the language will change perspective. Two, I really simply think the change comes with presenting undeniable arguments. We've seen a lot of great change in this country. I'm definitely an American. I really do appreciate the fact that we live in a land that's not governed by superstition, but supposed to be governed by facts, right? Because this is about the Enlightenment movement, right? You think about what took place in the West when you had the Renaissance, the Reformation, the scientific revolution, then you have the Enlightenment. The Constitution is an Enlightenment document, and we're supposed to respect the laws or the rights of man. And this is the evolution of the Enlightenment. This is the rights of nature as well, right? I think the concept of living things should be respected. So I see that. I do see it happening. Some people do not believe enslaved Africans could be free. Women could be given the right to vote. And look at us now, and we're better for it. So I firmly believe it's those who will be committed and not be distracted, because it's really about staying focused on purpose, if you will.
Great, thank you. We're running close to the top of the hour, but I don't want to break without asking the panelists one more question, and that is, what do you see as next steps where you're sitting? Or actually, next steps in your work, but also does this conversation open up a possibility in especially the Hudson Valley and Newburgh? That's why I really brought you here.
I think environmentalists need to start having more and larger protests. And we need to storm, if you will, and probably poor choice of words, but we do need to storm the official, our government official offices, and really make these demands but not just in a different way. And I think when you have enough people, so I think I'm more focused on the language for people to understand pollution is an issue, and how to get people to work together, and just, if anything, just to be that example. I really feel like in the Hudson Valley, we are an important part of New York State. New York State is an important part of this country, and I think we can do it. And Newburgh is the gem or the epicenter of that.
Thank
And
you.
also educating, letting the youth know about this starting when they're young, I think it will happen.
I'm loving it. Eileen, and then I want to see if Kathy could talk a little bit about the work we're doing this weekend. Eileen?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to the question and Kyle, like add more to what Kyle was saying. Um, some of the things that I have been personally working on is obviously collaborating with Kathy, with the Environmental Justice Fellows. We've been really putting our noses to the grindstone, getting out there, weeding trees, and potentially planting more trees, which Kathy will talk about. Working on pollinator plots, making sure that the trees are being watered properly, kind of scoping out potential tree planting areas more directed towards the city where it's severely bad, noting down kind of streetscapes, sidewalkscapes, the conditions in Newburgh. And alongside with working with Kathy and the Environmental Justice Fellows, we've been also working with Outdoor Promise with their Nature Representative Leadership Program, where the director Ronald Zuria, he has taken me and a couple of the other fellows and a couple of other underrepresented minorities, youth from Newburgh, and took us to a camping retreat to teach us about leadership and to care about nature and how to be a true role model. And it was a very eye-opening experience. And I think that a lot of the youth need that experience because a large portion of the people that went to that camping retreat, most of them had never even been into a forest or hiked or even been into like a pond or a lake. And it's upsetting because they came into this like really nervous and anxious and having all of these mixed emotions, having the stress of their life, but being outdoors helped connect them and help alleviate that stress and help them with their mental health. And it formed new friendships. We all formed friendships with each other. We all formed a community and kind of creating this force, reinforcing this kind of battle that we're undertaking with the environment, and really spreading the word about there's community farms in Newburgh. They've been doing a lot of work trying to get free food and fresh produce out to locations in the city of Newburgh where it's commonly low income or underrepresented minorities, all of these different categories of people that have been, faced discrimination, faced these unfair rights and unfair justices in their past and even now, especially when it comes to the environment, especially when the idea of redlining that's still present even now. Yeah.
There are Zooms where at the top of the hour, you see all these people going, gotta drop. This is not happening. And it's not happening because of the depth of this conversation, I think, and the truth of experience that everybody's bringing to this conversation. If folks do need to drop, we set you free, obviously. But I want to ask Kathy if she would just share a little bit about our conspiracy, our wonderful collaboration for Planting Power Newburgh, just so that folks will know what's up, because you can come help in future weekends.
Excellent. Thanks, Melissa. Yes. So Planting Power Newburgh is a new project that we're working on for this year and into the summer of 2024. It's with the Greater Newburgh Parks Conservancy, with Sustainable Hudson Valley, with Rotary District 7210 and Rhinebeck Rotary, and really substantial funding from Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation, and international partners in Korea, Rotary District 3700. And we're looking at the fact that the city of Newburgh is a so-called environmental justice community. We're at least 80%, we're already majority minority. And we're looking to build on pre-existing work to bring people of color, primarily from the city of Newburgh, into shared understanding of what the environmental justice issues are in front of us, what we can do, where the leadership is, and really to build a cohort of people who are really well informed and really well motivated to take action on both environmental justice, leading from the neighborhoods and from people of color in the city of Newburgh, and on ecological restoration. So we're hoping to sort of seed a growing group of individuals and organizations that are working together to restore the environment, restore the bonds of human kindness and human care in collaboration with Mama Nature. And so what we have coming up starting tomorrow, we have 3 training sessions bi-weekly. Kyle is our lead presenter, and we have various other folks speaking to specific topics. And interspersed between each of those training sessions, we have hands-on community planting days where we're putting trees in the ground. We're putting food forests in community parks. We're looking at shading impervious surfaces, and next spring, we'll have more of a focus on pollinator plants and shrubs and shoreline protection right around our beautiful city that's here on the Hudson Valley, and also has what we call our second shoreline, which is the Quasaic Creek. So it's really centered in environmental justice, it's centered in ecological restoration, and it's centered in the power of people to come together and work in collaboration with one another to make a huge difference. And working with young people is a very big focus. With the fellows, we've been working with folks 18 to 26. We're now getting into the high schools, yay, and even into the grade schools. And so next year, I think we'll be working with Kyle, who's really excited about bringing this information into his 5th grade classroom. And we have other elementary schools here in the city of Newburgh that are more and more interested in terms of science teachers, biology teachers, etc. So that's a little overview. Sorry to take up too much time, but thank you for the opportunity, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thanks to everybody. I think we got a great framing. We got some great reinforcement. We got some great personal visions and stories. I know others do have to move on to other things, but one of my taglines is, you're never alone when you work with Sustainable Hudson Valley. And we'll see some of you soon and all of you before too long. Maya, thanks for your important work, and everybody for what you're doing.
You're all wonderful. Have an awesome, awesome weekend.
Was this cool or what? Very
cool. And look, if there's a way that I can help educate your class, Kyle, or any of the folks in Newburgh on maybe how to use the amendment and who they're taking on, please let me know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I will share. Well, you've got the email thread.
That's right. So please let me know.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.